What's going on, guys? It's your girl, Eboni Elle, and I'm so excited that you're joining us for another episode of the Legacy Lounge. You watched the season launch, the premiere for Valentine's Day, and as it is Black History Month, obviously, I wanted to come to you with some great gems about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I don't know if you know, but I have a rare gem in my own household, which is my mom, Miss Juliet Jackson, who is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the region of Peel. Big time celebrity, always been. Today, she's going to have a lot of gems to give to you. So let's get into it. Mom, for those who aren't familiar with you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a mother, I am a sister, I'm a daughter, and I am a professional who has invested almost 33 years in empowering people to be the best version of themselves.
I love that. I love that. So, your rise to director, you started in case management, right? And you climbed the rungs all the way right up, something that many people don't necessarily get the opportunity to do for a number of different reasons. Take us back. Like, you had that first case management role in public sector. What did you learn as a caseworker that still shapes who you are and how you operate today?
Well, at that time, we called it general welfare. And I was there because I really just wanted to make a difference in people's lives. But at that time, Region of Peel was not very diverse. So, I volunteered for things just to learn, but not necessarily having aspirations for leadership. What I learned was that people will judge you and they'll determine that you don't belong in certain spaces. And my first reaction to that experience was anger and to pull back on who I was and what I was doing in that space because I was so upset. But what I learned is at the end of the day, regardless of what other people do, you can't allow them to change who you are. And if you have power of yourself, you have ultimate power. And I created ground rules for myself after some of those experiences that have governed me and that I've actually built on ever since. That would have been 1993 or 4. And they have really been foundational to my leadership.
I love that. I love that. So, in terms of the system, like you mentioned that you first got into case management because you wanted to help people. At what point and after that lesson did it turn into something beyond being a job for you, and instead almost being like a mission or a purpose that you held?
To be honest, it was always a purpose. And the reason it started off as a purpose was because originally I started off in the nonprofit sector. And I observed that people who had leadership titles were not leaders. And so when I went to the region of Peel, I thought if I'm not going to be working in spaces where I feel inspired or I'm working with real leaders, I might as well get paid more. But the moment I got there, I was inspired by the opportunity to work and partner with community and to give more than what my job description said, to motivate and inspire people to take control of their own lives. And that became my own mandate. I always did the extra that people needed so that they could take ownership of their future.
I love that. So, was there ever a defining moment for you then when you decided to influence the system? Because you're saying, okay, I got into this because I was kind of in that space. I did it for the purpose of passion. When did you decide that you wanted to turn passion into influence? Because ultimately, that's what you do now.
hmm I would say the role that I'm in now, which was my 4th director opportunity. But this was an office that I was asked to create. I was asked to lead it. And this was after many failures in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. So when I accepted this position, it was a personal mission because I knew it could result in the end of my career. And because nobody with diversity, equity, or inclusion in their title worked at the region anymore. So for me, I used strategy to gain influence, to rally a mission that people would get behind, and ultimately empower the executive level leadership to stand beside me, in front of me, behind me, to make changes in our organization that would create a space where everybody, regardless of your race, your gender, no matter who you are, your ability, could feel that they belong.
Mm. Let me ask you another question. So, for those who are watching who are like, this title sounds good, the way she says DEI, the way she says, like, the way it sounds is great, but they don't actually understand what it is. In the simplest way, how would you define diversity, equity, and inclusion?
There's a historic way, and then there is the evolution that I believe I've been leading. The historic way is really about recognizing and acknowledging the inequities that have happened historically, whether it's through enslavement, whether it's through colonization, capitalism, removing indigenous people from their land. Um, you know, those inequities um, are still impacting us today, but nobody really understands why. So, what I've learned is doing the right thing is not enough of a motivation to get people to get behind it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about doing the right thing. Not when the suggestion is, I have to take something from you in order to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've really incorporated the reality of psychology, which is I must protect myself, by helping people see that diversity, equity, and inclusion is really about belonging and inclusion. And so the strategies that I've led are really about saying to people, do you want to work in a space and live in a community where you belong? Everyone. Doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter who you are. And if the answer is yes, then let's accept that the history of inequity is not something that any of us are responsible for. We weren't here. So it means that we've been passing on a legacy of discrimination, of inequity, and it keeps being passed on as our legacy because we're keeping it alive. The older generation teaches the newer generation how to hate and how to have bias. So my cry for people, the rally cry is, let's be the generation to change it. We weren't here to do it. We didn't commit the wrongs, but let's create a space where all of us can belong together.
Okay, I like that. I like that, and that was a very big answer. And so I think, like, for many people, DEI is almost like a checklist, right?
Hmm.
You hear jokes about it all the time, like you're a diversity hire, you're a diversity acceptance. Like, it seems like a lot of organizations, schools, right, groups, they are leveraging DEI because they almost have to, right? And so in having to, it just feels like they're checking boxes. But in the space, some people question, is there actually an impact? And some people will say, yes, the impact is that you got into the space and now you have to fight to kind of show up and grow. But beyond that, what would you say are the impacts of DEI? Like, from your lens, why is it actually a growth strategy?
I think it's a growth strategy because there's truth that has to be shared, learned, and understood in order for people to feel that they want to be part of the change. And, especially through the pandemic, it was an eye-opening experience where all of a sudden people who were being told that they had privilege, that they're responsible for what's happened to everybody, started to learn more about the history that their forefathers actually were responsible for, and they started to feel guilt, which I don't think is the emotion we want people to feel, but they started to see a need to make a change. So I would say the progress that was made is that people started to get into different opportunities, but in organizations where it was forced, in organizations where they only stood behind it because they didn't want to be called racist.
Mm-hmm.
um, they very quickly changed their mind as soon as the world gave them permission to do so. The progress that's been made is in organizations that allowed their organizational culture, who they are, who they want to be, drive the change, because then it's a lasting change where everybody can at least get a seat at the table and be open and to opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Now, we don't usually talk politics on here, except all politics, but I have to bring it up, and I know your nose is gonna like crinkle when I say it. But Donald Trump calls out DEI, calls out DEI, right? And I think there's an ignorance in it, because when you don't come from a place of that history and systemic barriers, discrimination, like redlining, institutionalization, all of that stuff, it's easy for you to overlook. But on the other hand, I can also see that for some, it does feel like these people are just checking a box, right? They're putting me into a space because they feel like they have to, but not because they actually want to leverage my talents or to nurture my talents. In some cases, they put me into this space because they have to, and I may not even really be the best person for it. What does good DEI look like for you? Like, if you could design or give examples of good DEI, what is that?
Well, I'll go back to the diversity hire scenario, which I don't support. I never have. What happened through the pandemic is a lot of racialized people were placed in positions of power. They had no support, and they actually had no power.
Mm-hmm.
They were abused and mistreated in those spaces. And all it did was validate that that's the wrong decision.
Mm-hmm.
What good DEI looks like is, number one, you're making it very clear that this is a space where everybody is going to be treated with respect. Everybody is going to have access to opportunity. You are putting practices in place that allow you to mitigate the very real bias that, let's be honest, we all have, regardless where you come from. When you're talking about people who are not the people that are just like you, we all have biases.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you create a program that allows all of us, whether you're Black, white, brown, whether you're disabled, whether you're a different gender or gender orientation, the point is you're going to create practices that basically say everybody is welcome here.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to protect all of our rights. All of us have the right to have opportunity, to be treated with respect. And you're going to have those policies in place that will be, they'll be leveraged, but in a way that is equitable,
Mm-hmm.
not heavy-handed. And you're going to also anchor it in humanity. If we focus on the fact that the one thing we all have in common is our humanity, and have that be the foundation of everything that we do, you actually have an opportunity to succeed and actually just naturally let things fall where they need to fall, because you're always going to hire the right person. You're always going to make sure that people are supported in their roles regardless of what they look like or where they come from.
Mm-hmm.
That's what good DEI looks like. It doesn't look like a special little box that I created over here in this siloed space by itself. It influences the foundation of the organization and infiltrates its processes and its practices.
I like that answer. You remember that time I forgot to apply to law school? Yeah. I was talking about that with somebody today, and I remember when I did the LSAT. First of all, I was like, why are you asking me, three people in an elevator, one of them's closer to the button, who's going to get out first? I don't care. Like, what is this? That process was a hard process. And I remember when I didn't score so well on the LSAT, and somebody was like, it doesn't matter, Ebony. Like, you're diverse. You're a Black woman. And I was like, what does that mean? They're like, on your application, check the box that says you're a Black woman and talk about your struggles being Black. And I was like, arf? This person was mixed race, right? So they were like Italian and Filipino. And they're like, so on my application, I just said I'm a Filipina. And I was like, yeah, but the thing is, you are, but it's different. And she was like, just talk about how hard it was and the racism that you face, and then they'll let you in. And I remember that day I made a decision that even if there's a box that I can check that says I don't want to disclose it, I don't want to disclose it. Because I would want to get into law school because they want me, because I had good grades, or because I offer something that's unique, not because I had a teacher in grade 2 that never let me use the bathroom and such, right? And so as a result, it kind of made me think about this diversity hire, this diversity admittance, this diversity person, this statistic. How would you recommend people kind of get over that? I mean, I never got over it, but I obviously went into another path, thank goodness. But how would you instruct or advise people to get over that fear of being a number?
Well, there's two things. The first question that I always want to know is, how is that information applied to the decision? Because sometimes the information is requested not because they want to have a diversity hire, but they also want to track whether or not they're seeing a trend of bias that actually blocks people from progressing as a result of their race, for example. Um, but to me, the risk of checking that box, bearing your pain to say, I deserve this because of this,
Mm-hmm.
is when people start believing that you don't deserve it, there's a point where you start doubting whether or not you deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have to be true to yourself, um, and really, decide if you're only hired mainly because of your race, how will you feel? Are you prepared for what that experience is going to be like? Because there are trailblazers who did that. They went through that. The 1980s version of this conversation is somebody had to do it,
Yeah.
right? Somebody had to do it in order to pave the pathway. But we're not in 1980s anymore. We're at a place where we should be sophisticated enough, educated enough to be able to understand that if we're all human beings, we all have the right to opportunity.
I like that answer. I think it's about getting out of your head,
Yeah.
right? And I think it goes back to like Mel Robbins' "let them" theory, right? Obviously, law was just not my path, to be honest. I would have taken anything to say that I shouldn't apply. But I think that sometimes, yes, it can feel like you're just a number, and people will treat you that way. Let them, but continue to move forward, because with your abilities and abilities to grow, and hopefully with an organization, right? If you're in a position of leadership and you're watching this, you should ask yourself, like, in my org, how do we leverage DEI? Are we just letting people in and then not giving them the support that they need to actually grow? That's the big question, right? But as an individual, I think the biggest responsibility is that you should be asking, how can I grow? Right? You should be inquiring as well, so that you can grow within the org. And what may feel or initially like I'm just a number becomes I am now an influence, because I stayed and I asked for help. So as we're wrapping up, right? How can DEI connect directly or indirectly to financial advancement for our communities?
Well, there's many, um, you know, cultural groups, races where like striving for financial success is not really supported. There's a mistrust of systems. So maybe they don't believe in insurance, or they feel that chasing money is wrong, right? It is the source of all evil. And so it's important that we are educating people. It's important that we are reaching out to help people understand that this isn't about becoming a millionaire. This isn't about chasing something that's evil. It is about creating a legacy for your family. It is about protecting yourself and your family so that your hard work isn't wasted and people end up in situations where they end up in poverty because the death of a parent or a sibling. Um, we just need to be reaching out and helping people see that whatever their belief is, that we can dismantle that belief by showing them the value of being financially empowered.
Mm. And DEI can help that how, though? Getting into those spaces, is it? More so like for people who are like in the field looking for a job, DEI can help them. Do you think it's with resources to put themselves in a position for that? Or is it about opportunities to learn?
I think it is about opportunities to learn. And it is about self-empowerment, like for me, at this point, when I think about DEI, I'm more focused on where power is and how it's used, regardless of who has it. And finances, that's a power,
Mhm.
right? That's power. So we need to be including financial empowerment, whether it's to our schools, it's in the workplace, making sure that those systems are actually, in a place where people have access to it,
Mhm.
but we're also encouraging it for anyone and everyone.
I like that. Okay, so in closing, what's one message you want to leave the audience with about leveraging DEI as a tool for building legacy?
This is going to be a little bit of a weird answer, but I'm going to give an example as I answer it. My career has been really interesting because people would tell me that I should expect that, you know, uh, a white woman with blonde hair, blue eyes being my boss would mean that I would be treated differently. But I had a scenario where I worked for a woman who looked exactly like that, who created the first diverse team in our organization. And she was the one who saw something in me that I didn't know was there. And so I think part of it is we have to dismantle that everyone it fits in a box.
Mhm.
Like we just have to dismantle that. We have to believe that there are people who are looking out for us and that they have our best interest in heart. So the main thing for me is I judge people based on how they treat me and how they make me feel versus having judgment.
Mhm. I like that. Okay. Well, this has been a very insightful episode. And I think it's good for a couple of different things, right? For somebody who is out looking for opportunities, right? Understanding DEI and how that shows up. But also for somebody in a position of leadership, and that's somebody from any community looking at how are you currently leveraging DEI, interacting with it. Is there something that you can vocalize about moving from a checkbox system to an actual implemented strategy that supports humanness and human kindness, right? This has been an awesome episode, Mom. I'm so glad you're able to join me. For those who are looking to connect with you, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Juliet Jackson, Director of Culture and Inclusion, and they can find me on Instagram at the Juliet Effect.
Perfect. Well, I'm so glad that you came. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ebony.
And for those of you who tuned in for this episode, there's a lot more coming. If you haven't already subscribed, be sure to do so. Click the bell so that you get notified for our next episode. And until we see you again, then we say bye for now.